a bird or two, a goose or two. Well, a drone could be sucked in too. So there's I think Schumer, as a matter of fact, is the one behind trying to prohibit them within a certain perimeter around airports. That's not to say I didn't even mention lasers, because that's also another prohibited thing. And terrorism, well, what can I say about terrorism? An awful lot, nationally and internationally. Before I go to that, though, I want to just talk about one other technical thing. There's so many technical things you know about and read about driverless cars, right? That they are now reality. I mean, Google started it, but there are a number of people now developing it. Mercedes is developing it. Lexus is, Toyota is developing. They're all developing now cars that you can sit in and you don't steer them. They stop if they see something here, if somebody's passing you, if something. I don't, I'm too old to feel comfortable with that. I guess if you're a young, adventurous type, you say, to hell with it, I'll let the car make the decision, but I'm always afraid that the car will make the wrong decision, right? I think I have more faith in myself than a technical matter, because we all know that things break. We break, but also technical things break too. A wire shorts out, this light doesn't work, all of a sudden it's doing things it's not supposed to do. So that's another matter. But 3D printing is another major thing which is akin to changes in the Industrial Revolution, which we're all product of basically from the 1800s to the 1900s. And that is, you can make almost anything with a printer in your home, in your basement, in your apartment. It's true. You can make human parts. You can make guns. You can make chairs. You can make anything with 3D printing. That's technology today, which I don't expect all of you to understand totally, nor do I totally understand all that's going on. But that is something which you will be increasingly reading about in this new year, because all of these things are just now starting up and becoming actual, not just a theory, okay? I did start with terrorism. Terrorism I have in the national and the international. What is not terrorism? We see what happened in Australia. We see what happened in France. We see what happens in Belgium. We see what happens in Yemen, in Syria, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in Israel. And that I find the president did not really discuss to any extent. It is erupting around the world. It's not something to gloss over. And it is a major decision that this country will have to make, or major decisions on what to do. As you may or may not know, Congressman Boehner invited Netanyahu to speak in front of Congress this next month, okay? And this is an affront to the president, who is against additional sanctions against Iran. And that's a delicate discussion about Iran and where they are. As you know, they're a Shiite nation. As you know, the ISIS and ISIL and Al-Qaeda are against, they're Sunni. And if they're successful, Iran's in trouble. So we are actually cooperating with Iran and them with us now in fighting ISIL, okay, in Iraq, because it's to their advantage to kill them off in Iraq, because if they are not and they become strong, they're going to attack Iran, because Iran is historically, right, they've fought, Iraq fought Iran, a deadly fight, and they fight and kill each other on a regular basis now. So if ISIL or ISIS became a successful entity, Iran is going to be in trouble. So Iran has a reason to start cooperating with us, both from that point of view and the point of view that their population is educated, they want to be middle class, and the younger people in Iran want to join the rest of the world. And the rulers have to relent, otherwise they'll have a revolt like they had a few years ago, or worse, because they are connected on the internet, they do know what's happening in the world. So Iran has a lot of reasons to start cooperating with us and with the rest of the world, and relenting in their fundamentalist thinking, okay? And their thinking that the West is nothing but evil. So the president, in my view, is right. The Republicans want to push and some Democrats as well, want to push more sanctions. I think the president is right in not pushing too hard, because we don't want to isolate them more. We want to draw them in, which brings up Cuba to an extent, because there's that argument about Cuba as well. Cuba is 90 miles from this country, and it is better for our businesses and for our life totally if they were more like us, let's put it that way. And 50 years of being isolated has not aided us very much at all. They are a backward country in terms of their economy and what's there, and the business opportunities are immense. So the business community wants a relationship with Cuba, okay? For two reasons. One, the labor is cheaper than anything. Cheaper than, you don't have to go to China, you go 90 miles off of Florida and you got much cheaper labor. But you also have consumers there that can buy homes, games, farm equipment. You can go on and on and on. It's a huge market for American businesses. They really want this. So that's another factor there. Russia. You see, I was looking at the parade in Russia, in Paris, and I was wondering, there's all these countries there, because we weren't there, right? And a lot of people saying, where the hell were we? And I could feel the same way, although Kerry eventually went there and blah, blah, blah. But the impact would have been, I think, better if Biden or Kerry were there the day they had their major launch. There's all sorts of controversy. But I wondered, why didn't Russia go there? You know, Russia has horrible terrorist problem themselves. They've had subways blown up and schools raided with hundreds of children killed by fundamentalist Islamist terrorists. So I was wondering, why didn't Russia say? Now, who knows why? Well, I read one magazine I read called The Economist, which is really the best international view of life that I can find anywhere. And very interesting little article about Russia and what they are saying about the killings in Paris. They said it was a CIA plot. That's why they didn't send anybody, because it was an American plot to do this. They're demonizing us. Now, why Russia is doing this is Putin's mindset. I don't know, is because of the Ukraine and Eastern Europe that he wants to start expanding into. But the fact is, if you look at what's happening in the Middle East, Russia supports Syria, right, and is against ISIS and ISIL, like we're against ISIS and ISIL, just like Iran is for Syria, but they're against ISIS or ISIL, whichever you want to call them. So it seems to me it's to their advantage to crunch down on this, because they are closer to the borders that will encompass a successful state of that kind than we are. They are much more immune to any attacks from that part of the world. Why they're not joining forces with us is not understandable to me yet. Okay, Iran is starting to. Why aren't the Russians doing it as well? I don't know. And they're demonizing us for what happened so Putin, I think, has got his own game, which I think a lot of Russians are probably not going to be happy with. Okay, certainly I'm not happy with it. China, you know, China has its also terrorists. You know, they have major Muslim populations who are more in sync with what's happening in the Middle East than what the Chinese want to. As you notice, the Japanese, who are sort of nowhere in the world in this involvement, all of a sudden two Japanese men are now threatened with being beheaded by ISIS. Okay, so now all of a sudden the Japanese, who are anti-war up to a point, and at some point with North Korea on their border and China on their border, I don't know how much more anti-war they're going to stay. It's not to our advantage or anybody's advantage to have a very warlike Japan. They're a pretty formidable foe, as many of you and most of you, if not all of you, are aware of from the Second World War. So the point is, they got the ire of the Japanese up with their threatening to behead two of their population. North Korea, what can I say about North Korea? They're sort of off on another world. And potentially a threat. We still have 30,000 troops in South Korea and in Japan, and they're seconds away, just like the Israelis are seconds away from missiles from Hezbollah or Hamas or Iran. They're seconds away from South Korea is seconds away from whatever North Korea might want to say, and they do have atomic bombs. We can talk about Pakistan and the horrific things that happened in Pakistan with the Taliban and so forth, but again, we don't have time to go into detail with that either. In Africa, the Boko Haram, again, the fundamentalist Islamists are there and killing hundreds of people at a time. And the West is concerned. It seems like we're more concerned than people in Africa or in other parts of the world, to their peril. The minute you let people get away with such horrific crimes, it spells a bad scene to follow, because they don't know when to stop. All right? Mexico, well, Mexico, we have the drug king, you know, the 40-something students that disappeared because the police, they were there to protest something, and the police turned them over to drug lords, and all of a sudden, they're gone. So Mexico was a burgeoning economic force, and vacation spot has always been, my wife and I have been there a few times. I don't think I'm going back, but the fact is that it's on our border, and that's where our immigration line is, and potentially problems from illegal immigration. So those are the things that are going to be twirling around. Now, who here would like to be president to solve all these problems? Raise your hand. You've got to be nuts to be president. All these nutty Republicans want to be president. There are only a few nutty Democrats. The point is, it's a different world than we simplify it to be. It's a different world than we would like it to be. It's a different world than we thought we grew up in. It's a different world out there, okay? It's not armies and countries, it could be individuals. Today, I'm sure you're aware of it, in Tel Aviv, a Palestinian got on a bus, knifed 11 or 13 people. And you see pictures of him running down the street, knifing a woman in the back as he was running away. I mean, there are individuals taking many lives into their hands, and they were applauded by Hamas. Hamas, which is part of the Palestinian Authority, trying to negotiate with Israel, and here they're applauding some nut or some fanatic going around wantonly killing whoever just walked in front of them. So there's the mindset of many people in this world today that you and I have to contend with. And you and I meaning the billions who don't want this kind of thing to happen. All right? So therein lies my State of the Union, State of the World situation for 2015. Again, I agree with many of the things that the President brought out in the talk that he gave yesterday in the State of the Union, but I don't agree that he didn't emphasize some of the things which I've just emphasized, the big threats, because he said we've got everything under control. He said we have our friends in Yemen, and he mentioned Yemen, and today the rebels took over the government. Now they have an agreement with the government, the Shiite rebels, because you have to understand, Yemen is populated by Al-Qaeda, by Shiite rebels, and by the government. So now the government has agreed with the Shiite rebels that they will have, the rebels will have more say in the government. Maybe this will be a better approach to attacking the Al-Qaeda, because remember, the Shiites and Al-Qaeda and ISIS, the Sunni and Shiite divide is there. It's not going to stop. It's a complicated world. It's like many people complain why Turkey isn't involved in, it's a member of NATO. It wants to be part of the European Union. Why haven't they done more? Well, if you understand the history of that region, the Kurds who are being attacked in Kobani are also considered terrorists in Turkey because they have killed many Turks in their desire to be an independent country. The Kurds live in Iran, Iraq, Syria, Turkey, and all the countries there have major Kurd populations. They feel there should be a country. Remember, all that region was decided upon who was the country by France and by England and by the West. They decided the borders of Syria, the borders of all these countries after the First and Second World War. Okay, so there's a natural enmity there that we are not going to resolve. If we're there in 100 years, we're not going to resolve it. They have to resolve their own problems, understanding that peace is better than war. Letting people, live and let live is a much better policy than kill whoever doesn't agree with you. At some point, they're going to have to come to that, hopefully in our lifetime, but hopefully within the foreseeable future in any case. So therein lies what's in store for us, full of news. And I mentioned the fact, and I started off my talk tonight with Ode to America, okay? And I did that with a very purposeful reason. And that is, in spite of all this, it's comfortable here, isn't it? Is North Shore Towers a nice place to live? Yeah. Did you all eat well tonight? Yeah. Did you all go through some, the latest major pictures, the sniper, the American sniper? It gives me shudders to think about snipers, but the fact is, you didn't have to go through a sniper zone to get here, did you? No. My point is, we still live nicely here. We still have a good life here. Majority of people are happy with what they have, and if not, strive to get better. And so we shouldn't let the bad stuff that is always going to be in the news, at least now with everybody's a reporter, everybody has a phone that takes pictures, right? So everybody's observed for good and for bad. The fact is that most of us are decent, most of us are happy, most of us want the rest of the world to feel the same way. Now, I've spoken for 40 minutes, and I'm sorry I didn't give you a chance to talk. Now I'm going to give you your chance, because I always have a very alert and involved audience when I come to North Shore Towers, and I'm counting on this audience to be also there. And there have been many debates here, because you all don't have to agree with my opinions, okay? And that's part of why I do this, because I do want to give everybody I speak with a chance to voice their opinions, because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I missed something or didn't emphasize something that I should have. Now, so anybody, this lady always wants to talk, so she's I think she's a very fervent Democrat.
You didn't mention the infrastructure. Our bridges are falling down, people have been killed, the tracks are no good, and if they would have a stimulus and create jobs, these people would pay taxes and our budget deficit would go down. So I think that if the Republicans did this, they might get elected in 2016.
Okay, valid point about the infrastructure. Just today, they revealed that there were like hundreds and hundreds of bridges in New Jersey that are in need of repair. It goes for all our roads and tunnels and bridges as well in the country. We have not devoted as much. Those of you who have traveled see like more modern facilities elsewhere, all right? They have rapid trains. They have newer. Well, they're newer. Once you have it, once you have something, it tends to, well, we'll keep repairing it until it really falls apart. They are now going to, I think, they're going to redo the Tappan Zee Bridge, which is in danger of falling into the Hudson. Yes, ma'am.
Well, you got a question here.
Oh, down this side. Okay, this side. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Then we'll come to this lady here.
You spoke about Cuba.
Yes,
Now, we're the only country that have not dealt with Cuba.
yes.
All the European countries have an open market,
And Canada.
and Canada, and you're lauding it as a potential economic boom. Well, if it was so great, why doesn't Canada or the Europeans have those great hotels and whatever we want to put in there? What was holding them back?
Well, I would say that what's holding them back is they're not as good at business people as we are, number one. Number two, Cuba didn't signal a change in desire to change their relationships. So I would think there was always a problem in getting paid from Cuba. They have no money. So the point is there are other methods and other ways of financing things which could protect those people that want to invest there. You have to have governments involved in this, obviously, okay? Because they don't have money. But China had no money either at one point, right? If you put a manufacturing unit there, which the Europeans could have done for sure, I'm sure, the labor rates are infinitesimal. And then export like we use China, right? I can't answer your question, but I would gather that's the reason. Yes, this lady over here.
The thing that has concerned me a very long time is the fact that